What are some social norms that are pretty freaking weird if you think about it? Story 1. People expect you to get along with family, parents, and siblings, even if they treat you like crap. Exactly. My older brother would beat me daily, call me racist slurs, body shame me, etc., and whenever he would say something about me, I would stay silent. At one point, he was saying something along the lines of, "The reason you don't have any friends is because you look like a pig." My parents were right next to us when he said that. So I simply replied, "At least I don't have the same body type as a bowling pin." My parents instantly heard that and started lecturing me about how I have to get along with my brother. The whole time that happened, my brother had this disgusting smirk on his face. The minute my parents left, I punched that revolting smirk right off that nasty cow. We got into a full-on fist fight. I won the fight, but I know I'll never win my parents' love. And years later, your parents will make a surprised Pikachu face when they won't be able to realize why you don't want to live in the same house with them or that you don't call or visit them too often. This is way too common. My life is very similar, but my brother and I, just got to the point of not interacting at all despite living together. Not with our parents because we left to study in a bigger city. I don't even know what's going on in his life. We just share the same kitchen and live different lives. Whenever our parents call and ask me what he's up to, I just say, "Ask him." I just can't wait to be financially independent so I don't have to see the reminder of why I don't get along with my parents and golden child anymore. Hope life treats you better in the future. Definitely. I'm in my mid-40s and I have a living grandmother. She's been a nasty, hateful witch for the decades that I've known her, and it seems like it's always been the case. I cut ties with her decades ago. Now my parents, themselves in their 70s, are struggling because my grandmother refuses to go into a nursing home, even though she is in no way capable of caring for herself. So my parents are spending hours a day catering to her whims. My mother was recently telling me about this, and I asked why any of this was my mom's or my dad's problem. Clearly exasperated, my mother said, "She's your grandmother. Why in the world would that matter? Her problems are of her own making. So then there should be the solutions. She's spent nearly 100 years freaking over everyone close to her. I refuse to be part of that." My older sister has spent my entire life bullying me, talking badly about me, and stealing from me. I have so many insecurities from her constantly telling me how ugly I am, or how stupid I am, etc. She does things like pointing out my flaws in front of people, or purposefully throwing her kid's birthday party the same day as my high school graduation to try and take attention away. It wasn't until I met my husband that he pointed out how messed up it is and how she puts me down because she's jealous. I know that sounds childish, but if you knew her, you'd get it. I finally cut her out of my life, and it's amazing. My mom wishes we were close, but she doesn't push, which tells me she understands. Story 2. The expectation to have a huge wedding. The expectation to have a wedding at all, they're overrated in my opinion. My fiance and I are having a registrar office wedding, just us, 2 witnesses, the registrar, and the paperwork. His sister complained we weren't having a proper one, and that solidified my position to do it this way. No frills, no drama. We can't decide if we want a reception of any kind. Good on you. My wife and I did the same thing 18 years ago, and we're still going strong. The size of our wedding has had no impact on our relationship, except we saved a load of money. I come from a culture where weddings are a big deal, utterly bizarre to me because it's a day that's extremely personal between us. I'm not marrying my guests, many of whom I haven't met, so they won't even remember it at all. This is exactly what we did. Neither of us wanted a big wedding and decided there's much better things to spend that sort of money on anyway. It was the perfect day in the end, just the 2 of us, our 2 best friends, and endless sunshine. So many people we've spoken to since say they wish they'd done it the same way. My wife and I had a very small, by modern standards, wedding. Having both been to wedding parties where we basically had to provide free labor for a giant circus, we made a priority of planning things so that our guests wouldn't have to do anything but attend and have a good time. Family members kept freaking out because they were so sure that we or they were forgetting something, since none of them had any assigned responsibilities. On the eve of the wedding, my mother-in-law called in a panic because she just realized that she needed to cook breakfast for everyone. We assured her that she did not need to cook anything for anyone, and she seemed suspicious. The wedding itself went off without a hitch. The ceremony was short and simple, and the reception was fun and relaxed. Everyone had plenty to eat, enough time to socialize, and relatives who had traveled got to head home at a reasonable hour. After the wedding, we got a ton of comments that it had been the most enjoyable wedding people had been to in ages. A few months later, my cousin got married, and basically the same group of people spent a couple of stressful days packing into a huge church for an overblown ceremony that took several hours, before being stuck in a hot field before the reception while the literal mansion that was the venue was prepared. The food was awful, there were long speeches, there were so many people there that you couldn't find close relatives or friends to talk to, and everyone, including the elderly family members, left to drive home at about 3 a.m. I don't get it. Story 3. When I'm dead, just throw me in the trash. If you die here, I'll stick a bone up your butt and have the dog bury you in the backyard. My mother to my stepfather when he complained about aches and pains. My dad, if we were in a plane crash and the only food survivors had were the dead, would you eat me? My mom, frick yeah, I'm surviving that stuff. My dad didn't talk to her for weeks. He's already dead? Of course I'd freaking eat him. The only potential moral quandary is if he survived. Now I have to decide whether I can bring myself to kill him before eating him. I told my mom I would eat her before I would eat my dog if we were all stranded together. It's been 25 years and she's still salty about it. Well, that just adds to the flavor, I suppose. Oh my god, what? I think I once told an ex that if it was a survival situation and I was dead, they better freaking eat me and let my cats eat me too. My family has an agreement that we will eat whoever happens to be the fattest person at the time in an emergency situation on the grounds that they would feed more people and would therefore be the most logical option. Story 4. Working your butt off for 65 years to then live for 10 years. A woman at my work retired at like 67 to take care of her newborn grandchild when the mom went back to work. A few months in, she got brain cancer and passed away shortly after. Work, save, plan, save more, retire, and die before you can enjoy the savings. Brutal way to go. Every year, my workplace sends out an email of employees that have passed away in the past year, including those who have retired, if the organization is notified of their passing. Last year's list included a woman who had retired on a Friday and passed on Sunday. I can't imagine working decades to only enjoy 2 days of retirement. My heart broke for her and her family. My old boss was about that old and never even got to retire, despite planning to do so within a couple years. Leaving for work Friday, it's all, see you next week, business as usual. Come in Monday to find out he freaking died over the weekend of either a stroke or brain aneurysm. The man dedicated his whole life to his work. And for what? Story 5. Women can show their whole breast, just not the nipples. There was a plastic surgery show, and it had an episode about a male to female trans person. They were getting top surgery. The show followed them through the whole thing, starting with consulting with the surgeon, and they were on camera the whole time, topless, with nothing blurred. You see the surgeon do the whole thing, where they mark the body in all the places it will be cut. Again, nothing blurred. We get to the day of the surgery, still nothing blurred. They were literally laying on the table, being cut open, nothing blurred. As soon as the breast implant was inserted and filled with saline, the nipple was blurred. The same exact nipple we'd been looking at for an hour. That's honestly crazy to read. What dumb poop rule? I suppose the silver lining is to say that the FCC acknowledged her womanhood. Wasn't there also an episode where someone who had a mastectomy got implants and wanted a nipple tattoo? They showed the boob the whole time with no nipple, then when the tattoo artist drew on a nipple, it got blurred. Story 6. Blowing out candles on a birthday cake. It never occurred to me to look up the origin until now. For the ancient Greeks, putting candles on a cake was a special way to pay tribute to the Greek moon goddess Artemis. They baked round cakes to symbolize the moon. Candles were added to represent the reflected moonlight. Candles on cakes became a popular tradition long ago in Germany, too. For religious reasons, Germans would place a large candle in the center of a cake to symbolize the light of life. Some scholars believe that other meanings have also been attached to the use of candles on cakes. People may have believed that the smoke from the candles carried their wishes and prayers to gods who lived in the skies. Others probably believe the smoke helped to ward off evil spirits. Today, we still put birthday candles on cakes. Many people still hold superstitious beliefs about them, too. That's pretty interesting. I've never even thought about the significance of birthday candles in the old world, let alone the possible origins. Story 7. Fairy tale weddings. Huge money and stress for an over-choreographed one-day party. And it's all just a show to impress other people. I mean, if you have the money, by all means, have the biggest wedding you want. But the amount of people who put themselves in debt at the beginning of their marriage is insane. Don't know how it is in your parts, but in Eastern Europe at least, the guests usually give monetary gifts at weddings. So the couple usually expects, or let's say hopes, to make them sound less entitled, that those gifts will actually cover the wedding expenses. That gift is usually worth whatever the menu costs for the person or family, and then a bit more. But obviously that depends on everyone's financial situation. But yeah, I totally agree that big weddings are just for show, and should definitely only happen if you can already afford, without taking out a loan or something like that. Story 8. Forcing or encouraging a child to hug a family member that has known them since their birth, but the child doesn't have any sort of bond with said family member. I always tell kids whose parents tell them to hug me that they don't have to, and offer them a fist bump instead. My husband and I don't force our kids to hug anyone, even family members they do have a bond with. Older relatives get offended, but we really don't care. I always clearly state that they don't have to give anyone a hug if they don't want to. I hate seeing kids get forced to hug people. I did encourage once, only because it was custom in my family, didn't think anything of it, and when I saw how uncomfortable it made my children, I stopped. Story 9. Women's shoes. I'm a man, by the way, but I had this argument with my wife. I told her women's shoes were impractical, uncomfortable. Many of them, like heels, are very bad, but flat ones are also just as awful, and just dang right pointless. Eventually, when I explained that with most men's shoes, they're comfortable and robust, and a little bit of rain doesn't soak them, she suddenly went, yeah, they're poop, but said that's what we wear. Literally a social construction for women to wear poop shoes. Yeah, it's like this with women's clothing and accessories in general. Women's clothes are made with thin fabric that wears through quickly. Wallets fall apart after a year, and latches on purses frequently break. It's why we go shopping so often. Story 10. I can't think of a single reason for ties being the standard for business attire, other than it's a reminder to everyone in the room that you could be easily strangled at any time. I was once pulled over a desk by my tie. Years later, I'm in management, regional president, old school guy means tie type in a meeting called me out on my lack of tie. So I asked if I could demonstrate why I didn't wear one. He said sure. I walked up, grabbed his tie and said, "Now try to get away from me without choking yourself." Then told the story of being assaulted at the branch. Now I get a free pass not to wear one. Story 11. Paying tens of thousands of dollars to bury corpses in the freaking ground. I was floored when I was told the story of a guy in Ontario getting into serious legal trouble for burying his wife in a casket he made in woods he owned. He had a death certificate, and it was all signed by the doctor who examined her. It was in 1993 or so. Why did he get in trouble? That 100% sounds like the kind of thing that would have been planned beforehand, but I'm only assuming that. There are actually fairly strict laws about how a human body is to be disposed of. Generally speaking, you can't simply bury a body in the backyard, even if that's what the deceased wants. Story 12. The topic of shagging being generally taboo, despite the fact that it's the reason we are all here, and that a majority of people freaking love it. And it's only okay to mention when you're talking about having reoccurring unprotected shags in order to spawn offspring. A guy at work was trying, and on occasion, his beeper would go off, early 2000s, and he'd pack up because his wife was optimal, and he would leave to claps and cheers from people. Went on for about a year, but eventually they got pregnant. It was a bit weird at the time, but really kind of cool. Story 13. All these random rules about texting people. Texting is supposed to be a medium to talk to people, and they can respond at their own convenience. Instead, it's turned into a puzzle of deciphering how long messages should be, how long should I wait before replying, do I double text them or not? Did they read my message? Why did they leave me on read? List goes on and on. I do not give one care and just talk however I want while texting. Same here. Way too many rules to abide by. If the other person really cares, then they probably aren't worth talking to. Story 14. Garter toss is freaking weird. Yeah, we did not do this at my wedding. Really creepy custom. I don't need to see my coworkers and my husband's friends clamoring for something that's just been around my thigh, and I wanted to keep my bouquet, so I tossed the maid of honor's bouquet instead. I misread this as Gator toss and read the reply about a wedding and was so lost. New achievement to collect now, boys. Story 15. The expectation of tipping for certain jobs as a substitute for paying employees a higher wage. Yeah, especially tipping for something like a self-serve yogurt bar. Like, bruh, I did that myself. I always see pro tip folks saying you need to tip for services, but not realizing that in some way or another, basically every job is a service to the customer. The only difference is how visible it is to them. Story 16. Asking people how they're doing as a matter of courtesy when you truly don't care and are hoping they just say, "Good, how about you?" in response. You know what? You walk out the door, you see someone that you know, and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand. Story 17. I feel like too many people talk on speakerphone. Do you remember when conversations were private? Why are they on speakerphones and holding the phone to their mouths? If someone is having a conversation on speakerphone in my presence, I am now part of the call and will insert myself into it as much as possible. Story 18. Family asking if you're trying for a child. Like, yep, Aunt June, I'm giving her a cream pie every night. Just load after load busted inside her. The response for this is, no, we are just practicing. We can't get pregnant the way we do it. Maybe if she didn't swallow. Story 19. Circumcision is pretty wild. Cosmetic surgery on the genitals of a baby is pretty freaking weird. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.